Eine Olympiasportlerin, die im Ausland um Asyl ansuchen musste. Ein Oppositioneller, der in einem Park in der ukrainischen Hauptstadt Kiew gehängt vorgefunden wurde. Ein Passagierflugzeug, das zur Landung gezwungen wurde. Und Europas letzter Diktator, der sich seit 27 Jahren an der Macht hält und dem offenbar alle Mittel recht sind, damit das auch so bleibt. Das sind derzeit die Schlagzeilen zu Belarus, dessen Hauptstadt Minsk ungefähr so weit von Wien entfernt ist wie Paris. Die Opposition kämpft für ihr Land, aber es ist ein harter Kampf und ganz vorn dabei ist das Ehepaar Zepkalo, von denen ich sehr froh bin, dass ich sie heute im Studio begrüßen darf. Maria Zepkalo war einer der bekanntesten Präsidentschaftskandidaten bei der Wahl in Belarus 2020. Nach der Wahl war er aktiv im Widerstand gegen Lukaschenko. Er ist Gründer des Hightech-Parks in Minsk und ist Ex-Botschafter in den USA und in Mexiko. Und seine Frau Veronika Zepkalo ist eine der 3 Anführerinnen der belarussischen demokratischen Bewegung. Zusammen mit Swetlana Zichanowskaja und Maria Kolesnikowa hat sie den Sacharow-Preis gewonnen 2020 und ist für den Friedensnobelpreis 2021 nominiert. I'm really, really glad that you could make it today. Thank you so much. It's a huge honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The first thing I would like to ask you is, in the last year, you've essentially had to flee your country. You've had to bring your family with you, leave your friends, your closest allies behind, and you've had to watch friends at home and allies at home be arrested, interrogated, unfairly prosecuted, or worse. How are you?
Yes, this year has not been very easy for our family. This year has not been easy for the nation of Belarus, Belarusian nation. Within 1 year, we had to change 5 countries because we had to leave first to Russia, then Ukraine, Poland, Latvia, and now we are moving to another location. But when we think about the people who left in Belarus, the people who has to be behind the bar, it gives us the power and it gives us, the power to move further, to move, not to give up our fight, because we understand that our life belongs and our future belongs to Belarus. That's why we continue our fight towards new Belarus, towards new democracy processes which should happen in the country of Belarus.
I think that's a really interesting aspect that I think is very hard for Western Europeans to imagine, and that's a huge privilege, is what it's like to have to flee your own government. So what is life like? You said 5 different countries. Do you then try to keep your location as secret as possible? Do you have to change travel itineraries on a regular basis? How possible is it for you to stay in touch with friends and family at home? Can you give us a little bit of an insight there?
Yeah, well, definitely we are trying not to disclose publicly the exact location of our stay. However, it's impossible to hide the place where we are now at this or that particular moment. So we are trying to take some basic precautious measures, but we are trying not to think about it permanently, because otherwise you will not be able to live. The reason that we are moving from one place into another is not the security reasons. It's because now, for instance, we are going to the place where Veronika can get a job, can get to work, or return back to her work. And I'm, as an international consultant, I can be located anywhere. So now at this moment, we are thinking about how to feed our family, just how to establish ourselves somehow. And we are trying to find a balance between public activity that we are planning to continue, and also the necessity to earn some money. So it's a kind of a challenge that we have at this moment. But just in order to do public activity in Belarus, you can only have 2 choices. The first one, you either go to prison, or the second one, you should leave the country. You cannot have any public activity inside Belarus and be on freedom, be free. It's practically impossible. Not practically, it is impossible, because nowadays the regime closes even very, very small newspapers, some local newspapers that cover the life of local people, you know, just and practically no political agenda in their news. So even these newspapers are banned. So you can imagine about the overall situation in our country.
So the situation is worsening. One person that was imprisoned is Maria Kolesnikowa. She is a Belarusian musician who was also very active in the campaign of Viktor Babariko, who was another contender for president, just like you, who ran against Lukashenko. She was arrested. She's now facing a closed trial in Minsk, meaning that there's no observers and no media presence. You worked very closely with her. Are you in touch with her? Do you know how she is at this moment, how she's doing? She seemed, in the videos that we saw, she was dancing and she was making a heart symbol into the cameras. She seemed to be holding up quite well considering the situation.
Well, Maria, she's a very strong woman. She's a hero for all Belarus people because, you know, they tried to push her away from the country and she tore her passport. She has been in the prison for almost 1 year. In September, it's going to be 1 year since she was arrested. Within this time, I tried to send her the letters, the postcards. I'm not sure if she's getting any postcards from me. That's why I stay in touch with her sister. I stay in touch with her father. I saw a video yesterday, and I also made a post in the social network and with my thoughts about this situation with the closed trial. I mean, if the regime, if Lukashenko insists that everything in our country built in the right way, in a democratic way, because his way of democracy is very different from the international standards of democracy, why to have this closed trial where not mass media is allowed, when the ordinary citizens are not allowed to visit? Why afraid of the people so much? And we as Belarusians people, we would like to know why the person who did not commit any crime can face up to 12 years in the prison. So basically I do not, unfortunately I did not get a single letter or single postcard from Maria, but I stay in touch with her family, and as you saw, as we all witnessed yesterday, she is in a good spirit. She do a lot of physical activity, you know, she tries to run, she tries to do some push-ups, she reads a lot. So, but hopefully she will be free as soon as possible. And that's why, by the way, one of the reasons why I established Belarus Women's Foundation back in Latvia, because Maria, she imprisoned, and we started to collect the testimonies of the women who went through the Belarus prisons, who went through tortures, who went through beatings, who went through rapes, you know, and we for the 6 months we were collecting these testimonies, and we filed a suit to International Criminal Court in The Hague under the article "The Crimes Against the Humanity against Lukashenko." Therefore, we ask international community, therefore we ask Austrian government and Austrian people to support our claim, to support our claim, and to help us to initiate the criminal charges against citizen Lukashenko, because we need to stop terror in our country.
It's well established that the conditions in prisons in Belarus are inhumane, but it was noticeable that when the trials took place, there were no big crowds in front of the courts where Kolesnikowa was being interrogated. Minsk seems to have changed dramatically in the past year. When we think about the mass protests that happened, the situation now and today was very different. Open support for the opposition has become more and more risky. How dangerous of a place would you say Belarus is right now? I mean, you've already said, you know, you can either go to prison or you can leave the country. There's no other option to speak out. So does that just mean that anyone who dares say anything is persecuted?
Exactly. Even if you wear a red and white dress, or you wear red and white, this is our historical colors, Belarus historical colors, for example, the bracelet or earrings, you're immediately penalized. You put to the prison, you face the fines, and you know, very huge fines. In Belarus, you have to realize that people live very modest life, because the average salary is below $500 a month, and when you get a fine, the penalty up to $2,000, you know, like, it's a huge money for the ordinary people. That's why regime does everything just to threaten the people, to put them in the prison, to give them a real, you know, like 2, 3, 5 years, and like Maria, she's facing up to 12 years in the prison. But at the same time, the people who commit a real crime, for example, in Belarus, we have 12 people who was killed, who was murdered. Not a single criminal charges, not a single criminal case was opened. That's why for us, Belarusian people, we don't understand how the people who commit no crime, who is not, who did not do anything wrong, they can face so many years in the prison. But at the same time, the real criminals like Lukashenko and his surrounding are still freed, and they do anything they want to with the citizens of Belarus. But as the latest example demonstrated with this hijacking of the Ryanair plane, he is a real threat to the European citizens as well. He became a real threat.
Yeah, but in fact, we are pretty optimistic about the future of Belarus. I would like to say that. And, the fact that you do not see any big demonstrations doesn't indicate anything, because, just now Belarus society is like a steaming port, and before that, steam went out through the valves, now the government, this regime, it doesn't allow this steam go out of the port, but the process of boiling of water is still in place, and one day it will blow up. We are trying to focus on three major pillars that would bring this regime down. It's working movement. We are working closely with independent trade unions and with workers. The second one is we are preparing our society for the mass protests, and we are trying to convince our people in backyards to get acquainted with each other, just to share their views about the political situation and so on and so forth. And if they would know that some guys from special police forces live in the same building with these people, at the time when the time will come, they will stop them from going to service and explain them they should not go and beat Belarus people. And the third one is we understand that if Lukashenko will give an order to use real weapons to use guns against Belarusians, we are raising money to those guys from his inner circle that would arrest him in case he would give unlawful orders. And we announced the award. Now we're able to raise about 300,000 euros, as an award that is used in practically every European country or in the United States of America for those who would help to arrest the criminal. So this is basically three pillars that we are planning and we are building at this particular moment. This is the focus of our work inside Belarus, and it's just a matter of time, when we will trigger this process.
So you're saying the pressure is on and it's going to overflow eventually, but just to be very clear, you're telling us that there are people that that there are people in Lukashenko's inner circle who would, if worst came to worst, be willing to stop him and be willing to prevent a civil war from arising or the situation from really escalating into violence.
Yeah, well, Lukashenko-Regime is not a kind of a regime that has a political party ideology, or even he doesn't share his personal power with anybody who are, in fact, inside his inner circle. And this is a big difference between the situation in Belarus and, let's say, in Venezuela, where Maduro shared a lot of powers with his generals. Just some of them control customs, another, is in charge of distributing land on the good beaches of Venezuela, Caracas, and so on and so forth. So, this guy involves his inner circle in the business of Venezuela. And in Belarus, it's not the same way. Just these people, Lukashenko considers them as only instruments to keep his power. And they understand that. They understand that sooner or later they will be dismissed, they will be fired from their position. And let me consider, for instance, the Minister of Internal Affairs. Within Lukashenko's stay of power, he changed 10 ministers of internal affairs, and he changed also 10 prime ministers, blaming them of whatever he blamed them. you know, he just dismissed them from the position and sent them to nowhere. So you know, the guys who are staying around him right now, they understand that, and also, you know, just if the chance will come, and if they will feel that the appropriate atmosphere arrives, then, you know, just they can make an act, no doubts about it.
So you're saying they don't have enough to lose to support Lukashenko in critical moments. I want to look at some prominent cases outside of Belarus, because this is something that became noticeable over the past weeks and months, is that Lukashenko seems to be extending his arm beyond the borders of the country. The body of a Belarusian activist was discovered hanged in the Ukrainian capital in Kiev. This was Vitaly Shishov. He was only 26. He was the head of an organization called Belarusian House in Ukraine that was trying to help Belarusians flee to Ukraine from persecution. Police are investigating the case. Do you think that this was a suicide?
Well, you know, just we cannot 100% sure whether it was a suicide. But the symptoms, the way this happened, it seems like Belarus Secret Service could be behind it, because the same way was killed one of the activists in Belarus about half a year ago. He was also hanged in the forest, Krivtsov, and you know, just, and it seems like you know, just the same way was the same method to threaten Belarus opposition leaders was used by his secret service. However, you know, just sooner or later, what is hidden now below the surface will come out, and we will find out the truth. And you know, just now I think it's much more serious case. For instance, you know, the murder of the slaughter of Pavel Sheremet, the former Belarus journalist, also in Kiev, that happened in
2016.
2016. You know, just, and nobody knew what had really happened. However, it was a leakage of information that the former chief of KGB gave instructions to murder Pavel Sheremet. Now everybody knows that it was the direct instruction from Lukashenko personally to execute, to kill Pavel Sheremet. And you know, just those who are doing that should keep into consideration the fact that they will be persecuted later on for murders, for killings people, and they cannot avoid this persecution.
So the international community is now watching much more closely than they were 5 years ago. They also watched very closely when a Ryanair flight, a commercial flight, was forced to land over Belarus, brought down over the country, flying from Athens to Lithuania, I believe, in order
to Vilnius, yes.
Yeah, to Vilnius, in order to be able to arrest an oppositional blogger from Belarus and his girlfriend. Many observers then speculated that Russia was probably involved. What's your take on that? Do you think that the Belarusian Secret Service, the Belarusian regime, would have been able to orchestrate that on their own, or do you think there is support from other foreign powers, for example, Russia, in such cases?
Well, you know, frankly speaking, I do not want to speculate around things that, you know, just we are not sure about. We only know that there is a cooperation between Belarus special forces and Russian special forces, and, you know, just they do have a change of information, and that's for sure. But in this particular case, we have no idea how it could happen. For instance, I was flying once from Poland to Kiev, or vice versa, I just don't remember. And, you know, just the representative of Belavia saw me, he approached me. So, you know, just it would happen the same thing in Athens, you know, just when somebody from Belarus who occasionally recognized Roman Protasevich could make a phone call to Belarus authority, just double-checked that he was in a plane and then, just instructed them. Maybe it was just not necessarily somebody from the Secret Service. We just don't know.
So you're saying...
Later on we will find out how it could happen, but they were sure that Roman Protasevich was there. Somehow they could probably double-check that he had a ticket and he was boarded to this flight, and then they made this insane decision.
But now, as a European country, you have to realize that Lukashenko became not only a threat to Belarusian people, because he has been terrorizing us for many, many years, but now he became a threat to European citizens. That's why we ask for the actions, like support from your side to stop terror, to proclaim this regime as a terroristic regime, because Lukashenko regime has all signs of the terroristic state, because what he does with his actions, hijacking the planes, killing people inside of Belarus without initiating any criminal charges, killing people outside of Belarus, pushing people outside of Belarus, the citizens, because we have to flee the country. Some people were pushed out from the country. So these are all the symptoms symptoms of the terroristic state, terroristic government. That's why we ask European countries, Austria, for example, to proclaim, to announce this regime as a terroristic.
It seems as though Lukashenko is targeting more actively opposition figures abroad as well as at home, and you being one of the most prominent opposition figures, when you read about cases like that, does it make you more worried about your personal safety as well?
We try not to think about this personal security, because, as Valeria said, if you think about security all the time, you will not be able to work, you will not be able to continue your fight. But as I said, as Valeria said, you cannot survive in Belarus if you're in opposition. You end up either in the prison or in exile. So we enjoy that we are not in the prison, and we need to take advantage that we are in the prison. That's why we need to continue our fight, we need to continue our activity, and we try not to think about the security issues, because otherwise there is no chance for us to continue, because you will be frightened, you will be afraid of something else, of some actions. So we focus on our activity, and we focus how to get rid of this bloody regime in Belarus.
I want to talk a little bit about Swetlana Zichanowskaja, the Belarusian athlete sprinter who is now seeking asylum in Poland. Now, you know Lukashenko, you've worked on his first presidential campaign, you ran against him, you know the man, you know the regime, you know how he works. This is a young 24-year-old woman who simply, all she did wrong is record an Instagram video where she said that she was forced to compete in a discipline that she hadn't practiced for or trained for. That's a very specific criticism. It's quite a mild criticism. It's something that, as someone in a Western country, you would think to yourself, well, that's a very legitimate point. She's now scared to return to Belarus. She's herself and her husband have applied for asylum. Why would a regime persecute an athlete like that, who is not politically active, not part of the opposition movement? I mean, this is a young woman who made an Instagram video. Why the overreaction?
Good question. It's, for any dictatorial regime, I think sports is a big politics. And, I remember the times of the Soviet Union when the most prominent athletes were surrounded by KGB guys, and they were attached to an athletes, especially when the competition took place somewhere overseas in America or in Europe, and their task was to protect them from the contact with potential agents of the West. So, they didn't want to have such a scandal. And, the Belarus currently reminds the Soviet Union at the end of these days, when all the official delegation consisted predominantly with KGB guys, or secret security people. They surrounded the people, and they acted according to their way of thinking. You know, just if something happened, if she said the very standard things, you know, just that she was not trained, and you know, just she couldn't give any serious results on this distance because it's a different distance. I think they reported immediately to Lukashenko, and you know, just the guy, I'm pretty confident, gave his personal order to bring her back to home. You know, just it's a kind of a, you know, insane, schizophrenic approach, because he really personally believes that he understands in sports, and you know, just many times, or just some time ago, he said about we have Daria Domracheva, the biathlon Olympic champion, and you know, just he publicly said that he gave her instructions how to run distance, how to run distance,
how to win the games.
You know, just, and this was the reason why he won 2 Olympic golds. You know, just if he would not tell her how to run, you know, maybe she would lose it. You know, and that's again, you know, just for a normal way of thinking, you may not understand that, but you know, we know the guy, and we know that Christina appeared to be in a difficult situation, and it was the best decision for her to live the same way as probably Rudolf Nureyev, you know, who was the fast guy. He was not an athlete, he was a belly man, you know, just...
So as ridiculous as all of that sounds, Lukashenko giving athletes advice on how to win competitions, but in all seriousness, the regime doesn't seem to be easing up. Quite on the contrary, Lukashenko seems to be clamping down, seems as much in control as ever. Political repression actually seems to be worsening. What makes you so optimistic? You said there's a pressure cooker and the pressure is mounting, and you said we're close to the critical point. How can you say that when he's persecuting athletes, persecuting people, Belarusians abroad, doesn't seem to be preparing to make any kind of significant changes?
For every dictator, you know, just every dictator should rely or relies his power on 2 basic pillars. The first one is the security forces, the force, and the second one is public popularity. You know, just none of the dictatorial regimes could survive for any prolonged period of time without having these 2 major pillars. You know, Lukashenko has one pillar, definitely he still can control security forces, but he is losing every day, he is losing public support. You know, just, and historically, if you look at any regime, you know, just it's impossible to run the country for a person who cannot show up in front of the people, you know, who cannot come and speak with the normal people, who is afraid of people, and even his inauguration could take place secretly. So, you know, just this is impossible. And from now, you know, just it's Lukashenko reminds me a guy who runs on a thick layer of ice. You know, just if you would stop, you know, just you would immediately drown. You know, you have to move, you move fast, you know, just in order to be able to stay on a thick layer of ice. So this is basically what Lukashenko now looks like, and he will continue to make mistakes, he will continue to irritate Western Union. And it's just really funny that Western Union is trying to use legal instrument, very soft legal instrument, in order to stop the dictator. I think, you know, just now Western leaders remind me Neville Chamberlain, you know, just before the Second World War, you know, that were trying to pacify, you know, a crazy guy. You know, just if the West would react more strongly from the very beginning, understanding the symptoms of a danger, then we would probably avoid the Second World War, it would be in much lesser scale. So this is basically what we think. The West should definitely act very, very strongly, actively, you know, just not to limit itself only with some legal procedures, but really a lot of instruments. And if it would be just a political will, you know, this regime will fail down immediately.
So I guess that's the big takeaway for today, for the West to add to the pressure in the pressure cooker so that the moment when it overflows can come faster. I'm hugely grateful for you to have taken the time today to come and speak to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Auch bei Ihnen bedanke ich mich an dieser Stelle. Vielen herzlichen Dank für Ihr Interesse am Thema. Danke fürs Zusehen.
Boom, boom, boom.